Hello everyone, Michael Lee Parker here, and we tonight have another special show. This is about entrepreneurship. Is it in you? And we're talking about entrepreneurship and what are some of the things we need to consider in being successful entrepreneurs. You all know I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly in entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur for almost 20 years now, and seeing all of the ups and the downs and all of the things that you go through. There are some things that I want to share with you tonight that can help you. For those of you that are already entrepreneurs or are aspiring entrepreneurs, this show will be a wonderful, wonderful tool for you. So let's talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and what it actually means to be an entrepreneur. And now, some of you may not know, let me put this up on the screen for you. When you think about the word entrepreneur, this is really a French word, and there's many different things you can get into in terms of entre and preneur and what these things mean. To be a buyer, to be a taker, to work between parts. There's all kinds of things in the French definition. But when we think about entrepreneurship, and think about that in terms of what it means in the culture, especially in America. Really the process of designing, launching, and running a new business, which is often initially a small business. Now, every now and then you have people that start something new, have a lot of resources, and do things a different way. But for the most part, we're talking about entrepreneurship at its roots. And this is something that starts with someone being willing to take on that journey of that definition and all that comes with it. Now, a lot of times we might think we want to be an entrepreneur, but we have to really understand what it entails and what it actually involves. And so you out there to have, there's something on the inside and things that you want to actually accomplish, or you're already on that journey and you're looking for ways to go deeper. There's some things that I want you to really consider. There's some things I want you to think about. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is, you've no doubt heard this before, but follow your passion. Right? We all have a passion, and we should follow that passion. Well, I want to place a little question mark here about following your passion. Actually, I want to educate you tonight about why it's important to be careful about following your passion when it comes to entrepreneurship. Now, passion has its place, but we have to define that, and we have to be very careful. These are some real-life things that you need to understand. Now, let's go deeper into this. So when you think about most people, I'll use an example of people who win awards, like an Oscar, or, they win some sort of award, they get on stage, whether that's an entertainer, an athlete, and normally you see statements like this: don't let anyone tell you your dreams are not possible. Or people will say things like, you can do anything you want to do. Now, that is definitely a good mindset to have in terms of being positive. But when you're talking about entrepreneurship, when you're talking about business, these statements are very dangerous, because there's a lot of factors in terms of what makes a good business, what makes something successful, what is something that someone is willing to pay you for. There's a different set of rules when you're talking about entrepreneurship. Bruce Lee used to talk oftentimes, when you're talking about boxing or you're talking about some structured forms of martial arts, it's very different than when you're talking about fighting. Fighting has there's no rules in fighting. It's a different set of rules. And when you're talking about entrepreneurship, when you're talking about business, when you're talking about people's money, you talk about people taking money out their pocket and giving it to you, there's a different set of rules. And sometimes we got to be careful when we're too focused on passion and not what it takes to make a business successful. Now let's go deeper. Let me explain. So there's the one mindset when you talk to someone and you say, I want to be successful. And as you see on the screen, the emoji there says, you got this, right? And sometimes that's how people feel. People feel like, you got this, you can do it. And that's good to have people around you that are, basically telling you that. But when they hear what you want to do, and if they really know you, they might look more like this. As you see on the screen, you want to do what? So sometimes people say, I want to do this, I want to do that. But the people that to know you, they might know the disconnect between what you want to do and your abilities. So you have to begin to make that connection to be a good entrepreneur. So keep that in mind. This is very important with respect to this topic. Now, let's look at this even deeper. Now, you see the beautiful picture here with the young ladies, and all of them are hanging at this jungle gym, and they're saying, we're going to be Olympians, right? Well, the truth is that's a wonderful dream. That's a wonderful passion. But it might not necessarily, for all of those young ladies, actually be something possible based on who they are, their makeup, their build, the way their coordination, just the actual real abilities they have. And so you got to find that balance between passion and believing in yourself, and then really being able to look at what it takes to make a successful business. These are two separate things, and sometimes they come together, but you got to understand the differences. Let's look at another example. Here's a young man, and this young man, just genetically might not grow beyond 5'4". He's a young kid now. He's looking up at some ball player saying, one day I'm going to dunk on you for sure. And we would normally want to tell any kid, you can do anything you want to do, Johnny. Well, but at some point, when you're dealing with business, business is real. Business is not going to patronize you because you're a cute kid. People don't pay you for that. This is the real hard truth about business. So you have to understand the difference between passion and what really will create profits in a business. So again, let's look at another example. Here's a situation where we got a cute young girl. So I'm going to be one of the greatest dancers ever. Great for them to have that passion. But what if she's not coordinated? What if she has no rhythm at all? I mean, unteachable not having no rhythm. I'm not talking about just maybe you can get some tips. Some people just don't have some rhythm. And these are real things that they'll begin to discover as they go through their life. They'll see things that they want to do, but maybe they don't have that ability in a way that allows them to operate at an excellence level that people will pay for. So they can spend their whole life trying to get to something that is not easy for their makeup to do. Now, this is something you have to consider when you're dealing with entrepreneurship. Now, let's look at this from this angle, though. Following your passion is great for hobbies. So make sure you keep that in mind. Hobbies are great. You can follow your passion as long as you want. I like playing some piano. I play a little drums. I do a little, I love music. I sing a little bit, all these little things. I like art. I like to write, right? But when you're talking about business, I got to look at a different set of rules. So remember, follow your passion is great for your hobbies, but not necessarily for entrepreneurship. So this is something I want you to keep in mind. It's a very important factor. Now, let's look at this individual looking in the mirror, and sometimes a dream job really is a dream. And we have to be honest about that so that we can really get closer to the real success of being good at something that people will pay you for. And this is the hard facts. These are the cold, brutal, hard facts of the case when you're thinking about being a good entrepreneur. And so, again, imagine, again, always being able to keep our dreams, but make sure we wrap those dreams in some other considerations that is successful for entrepreneurship. Now, let me explain to you what I mean. Here's something to think about. When you think about dream job, well, this is something that I like to say. Happiness and fulfillment at work is oftentimes not because of the job. So we might say the dream job, I'll be happy then. A lot of times people that are really happy and fulfilled at work, it's not even the job, but the overall experience, the impact that they're able to make, and the people that they're working with, a lot of time is what creates that happiness and fulfillment. There's people doing jobs that, maybe to the surface might not look like the funnest things to do, but they love who they're working with. They love the impact they make, and they love the overall experience. So we have to be careful. Even when we think about what will make us happy and what we're doing, we have to measure by the right set of rules. Now, having said that, I want you to look at this diagram. So passion minus the ability to do that passion, it's not even possible to accomplish it, right? So if I can't literally, if I'm not good at math and I say I'm going to be an astrophysicist, right? That's my passion. It's not going to be possible, right? If I'm not an individual that is tall, but I say I'm going to play center for the Lakers one day, that is just not possible because my ability is not matching the passion. Now let's look at another scenario. So here's a scenario where my passion and my ability is there. Well, now I have possibility. Possibility is there, and there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with pushing yourself and saying, hey, I have an ability, I believe in myself, and all things are possible. There's nothing wrong with that when your ability can match that passion. All right, but now we're dealing in possibility, and is possibility even enough? Let's look deeper at this. Every day is full of possibility, and we should always, focus on having possibilities. Possibilities are great, but in entrepreneurship, possibility is not enough. When you really want to be successful, if you really want to do something that can last, if you really want to build something that people will pay you for, you got to move deeper and further than just possibility. And that brings us to another word, which is this word, opportunity. So opportunity is something totally different. Opportunity means there is a real life, tangible, factual, something there that I actually can do that not only matches a possibility and dealing with ability and dealing with, passion. There's actually a market for what I'm doing. There's someone is interested in. The person that founded Twitter started off saying, here's an easy way to send messages to people, text messages, and people might want to know what other people are doing. He wasn't passionate about it. Yeah, just a random idea. He saw an opportunity. There's people who created opportunities that are multi-billion-dollar opportunities. They weren't passionate about it at all, but they saw a niche, they saw a door, they saw a gap, and they were able to move within that gap because they found a need that people will pay for. So when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, you got to be very careful. You can be stuck on a passion and miss an opportunity. That goes right with what we're talking about here on this slide that you see. You can be blinded by your passion and shooting in the wrong direction. So you're so passionate about something, but you're coupling that passion with entrepreneurship, and sometimes they don't align. So sometimes you've got to make sure you can actually look at the right target. You got to make sure your eyes are wide open and you're able to see what you should be shooting for to be successful in business. That's very different than just fulfilling something that's a dream or that's a passion. You can have both, but don't commingle when you're thinking about building the best business that you can build. Now, so before wrapping up this segment, something I want to leave with you. As you see on this diagram, so sometimes your greatest opportunity, I want you to remember this, sometimes your greatest opportunity is actually coming from walking a different way. Not only a different way than the market, not only a different way than what everyone else is doing, but sometimes it's a different way than even what you're comfortable with. Sometimes it's a different way than even what you wanted to do. Some of the greatest successes that I've ever had was doing things I don't necessarily want to do. As a CEO, I have to do things every single day that I don't like doing. But if I don't do it, we will not succeed. So we have to understand business is about doing what is required to meet an opportunity that will lead to profits and lead to gain. Now, when you can do that and keep your character and keep your integrity, that's something that is always special. And you always, that has to do with who you are as a person. But you want to make sure you understand the difference between possibility and opportunity. So to sum it up, I want to leave you with this. Remember, true entrepreneurs don't necessarily follow their passion. They find an opportunity and they do it with passion. Keep that in mind. And this leads right into our next segment here about the 5 well, I should say 5 things successful entrepreneurs just can't ignore. These aren't the only things, but these are some things I want to share for tonight. So as you can see here on the screen, these 5 things successful entrepreneurs can't ignore. I want you to listen very closely, because here at CEO, we don't just talk about life, career, and business any old way. We always go back to the 4 villains, the 4 enemies, right? Self-ignorance, fear, dealing with insecurities, dealing with being mediocre in any way. These things limit our success. And so a lot of times people think entrepreneurship is about business, and they miss that entrepreneurship is really about them. And so let's start off. It kind of goes to number 1. The first thing I want to expose to you as something we can't ignore is the subject of self-esteem. Self-esteem has to do with how we esteem ourselves, how we feel about ourselves. And did you know this directly begins to interfere with how you approach your business? Because when challenge comes up, when you have to work with other people, when someone crosses you, when someone gives you some hard feedback, if you've got certain things in you about how you feel about yourself, it will directly impact you and cause you to shut down when you shouldn't. If you're overconfident, you don't realize how you make other people feel, and no one wants to work with you because you esteem yourself too highly. So you have to have a balance in how you esteem yourself. If you're not aware of who you are, how you think, and what makes you tick, then how can anyone else work with you when you don't know you? How can anyone else trust you to help them when you can't help yourself? So self-esteem is important. You bring that with you to your business. You bring that with you to your idea. You bring that with you to the people who work with you. So having your self-esteem in a healthy place is directly related to being a successful entrepreneur. Sometimes we can't handle failure, and sometimes we can't handle success. Sometimes people, as soon as they get any success, it changes them. They don't know how to stay level-headed as an entrepreneur. And so then that success turns into a failure. So we have to have that. Now, let's go to number 2. Another key area is determination. So I can't say enough about determination. As an entrepreneur, I've been through so much. I've had to close businesses. I've started new businesses. I've had to reinvent myself. I've lost team members. I've started with new team members. I've had to sacrifice. I've had to go without to keep the business going. I've suffered humiliation. I've had to deal with all kinds of things that entrepreneurs have to deal with. And when you're determined, see, we were talking earlier about, following your passion versus following an opportunity. When you know that everything is aligned, then now determination can kick in. When you know you're really doing something you have the ability to do, and there's an opportunity for it, now you can be determined. And so determination, how far will you go when it's a tough mountain to climb? How far will you go when everything is not just peaches and cream? This is, again, getting back to that bounce back ability that I like to talk about when things begin to come up. So determination is not so much what everyone can see. It's those night hours that no one can see. It's what you do when you're by yourself. It's that time that no one's watching, that you keep on going. It's not even just keeping working physically. It's also mentally staying in a place where you really believe you can accomplish what you set out to accomplish. One philosopher once said, the heights of great men were not reached and kept by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, they were toiling upward in the night. And this is what you got to be able to do when you're talking about being determined. All right, so let's continue to number 3. Number 3 is just as important. And so as you see on the picture, the cute little duckies following their mom, I want you to know in entrepreneurship, we talk a lot about leadership, being the boss, right? Being in charge and all of that. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs are only great because they were willing to follow. Being willing to follow is just as important as being willing to lead. Fellowship is just as important as leadership. Being willing to realize when you need to benchmark, you need to look at what someone has done and borrow from it. Learn from someone who's already been there. A lot of problems with entrepreneurship is you start finding people that are not willing to listen. They're stubborn. They don't want to take any advice. And I found that there were times in my journey that I got that way. And I had to realize I I needed to check myself, be willing to listen to others, be willing to learn from others. Everything doesn't have to be a new idea. Everything doesn't have to come from you. Everything doesn't have to be invented. Some things are already excellence, borrow from that excellence and use it as a means to your own excellence. So again, the willingness to follow is very, very important. Never be unable to listen, to hear, and to follow something that is really worth following. And that's the key. Don't follow just any old thing, but you can follow something that's worth following. All right, number 4, research and planning. Now, I can't tell you how many times we see entrepreneurs, and I've tried to coach entrepreneurs, that just did not put the work in to being prepared. They didn't research and they didn't plan. They have a good idea. They even have passion. And there is even an opportunity, but they didn't do their homework. Research and planning is very critical if you want to be successful as an entrepreneur. You got to know your market. You got to know who came before you. You got to know who you're competing with. You got to know how the dynamics are changing. You got to research the things around what you're doing, not just what you're doing, but what's around what you're doing. What is direct and indirect? You got to also have a plan. You know, a lot of times we are so passionate and so inspired, we forget to write something down and figure out what we're doing, right? We say, no one's following me. But then someone said, but where are you going? He said, well, I'm going over there. Well, how? Describe to me the roadmap to get there. Where's the directions? He said, well, I don't have those details. You say, well, I can't follow you till you know where you're going. So research and planning is very, very important. And we've got to be willing to put the energy in and make sure that you really know what it is you're trying to do. And remember that one of the greatest things ever begins to start when you begin to write something down. One book, think about it, one book. It creates movies, video games, characters, clothing lines, because someone wrote something down, created a narrative and a story about what they were doing. And you've got to find out, what is your story as a business? Who are the villains you're trying to overcome? What is the hero? And what is the superpower that you have that makes you different? Why will someone give you money? And you can describe that story if you put in the time. All right, number 5, last but not least, know your numbers. So I can't say enough about you do all of this in business and you've not taken the time to know your numbers. You don't know what your cost is to get a customer. You don't know what your profit margins are. You don't know what your gross margins are. You don't know the difference between gross margin and profit margin. Being able to understand your cost, your true cost, not just the cost of the widget that you use to sell to someone, but the cost of your time, the value of your time, the true cost of the people you need to work with to get something done. That person who's doing something for you now because they're your friend, that's not going to last. There's going to be a cost for that down the road. Making sure you really understand the true dynamics and do it based on the worst case scenario so that no matter what comes up, your numbers are strong enough to sustain whatever may happen. So remember, you have to take the time to build a business model through numbers. Now remember, we can build a business plan, we can make fancy presentations, we can have all kinds of vision boards, we can have everyone jumping up and down about any idea. The key is, can you tell your story with numbers? When I can look at something that has numbers and it literally tells me how you're drawing in your customer, how you're converting that customer, how that customer is going to translate into revenue, and what is the cost associated with getting that customer and scaling up to get more of those customers, and why is this profitable over time? And when you can tell that story with numbers, now as an entrepreneur, you have a roadmap to true success, because at the end of the day, it takes money to make money, and it takes money to sustain a business.